But for anybody new here, welcome. My name is Katie. My handle on here is the Sassenach Corner. We are all Sassenachs here, so my little page is the Sassenach Corner of the internet, where we can all come together and hang out. And I am hosting an Outlander book club. We are currently on book 1, Outlander. We have previously read the prequel to Outlander, Virgins, and right now we are on chapters 16 through 21. So if you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you. If you head to my profile, there is a Beacons link, and you will find the Fable group where you can join us. So chapter 16, Claimy, is that their like name together? Claimy? I don't like that, but apparently that's what my mind picked together. Okay. Claire and Jamie are getting to know one another and just really enjoying married life. And they take this wee little hike, and Claire asks Jamie, they take this wee little hike, and Claire asks Jamie, why are you with Dougal? Why are you not at home on Fraser lands? And he tells her that after he left the fort, he didn't really care about much of anything. And, his father had just passed away. And he tells her that Dougal had told him, and Dougal, always being messy, that Jamie's sister Jenny had gotten pregnant by Randall. And then she had taken up with an English soldier from the garrison. And so Jamie, he's feeling ashamed. So he said, I sent back what money I could, but I couldn't write to her. I left her alone. Now, part of me, kind of is shocked that Jamie didn't go back to Lollybrock and help Jenny, but he's also so young, and he's also so prideful, you know what I mean? And I say this all the time, and I don't mean this in a bad way. Jamie has a hero complex. That never goes away, right? And we know how much, spoiler alert, we know how much time and Claire really changed Jamie and help him grow. So, oh yes, we'd love to have you reread. And also, if he thought that she had taken up with an English officer, he's not going to want to be around that. He just escaped from there. He's not going to want to be around that. And yes, Bestie, he was so young. So, he was really ashamed, and he thought he should have been there for her, and he wasn't. So he ended up coming back to Scotland because he heard that Horrocks, who we know is the English deserter, who is a witness and saw the unaliving that Jamie is being, blamed for, being accused of. Horrocks is working for a man that had connections with the Mackenzies. So the man told Colum to get word, I think he said to get word to Jamie or something like that. But that's when Jamie was hit in the back of the head with the axe, and he was nearly unalived. And then he reveals to Claire that he wonders if Dougal is the one that did it. And Claire's like, what? Why would you think your own uncle would do that? And he tells her, Dougal knows that I might be considered for Laird, which would outplace him. So he's not going to like that at all. And, but Jamie doesn't want it. And so Claire says, couldn't you just tell Colum and Dougal you don't want it? And then she says, oh, but you did at the gathering. And then she kind of puts the pieces together, and she understands really how dangerous that night was. And she kind of did that to him. how, exactly how much danger she put him in that night. She did that to him. Whoopsie. So then they see the watch, and the watch are the men who protect the locals from the English soldiers. But they don't do that out of the goodness of their hearts. They do that for a pretty penny, right? So they go fishing, and I love the way Diana is just, I really appreciate the details that Diana puts. And, I really just visualize, I don't know if you guys do that, but I can see them there lying on that log, and Jamie just like waiting for the fish. That was just, I love how she did that. So while they're fishing, Claire mentions that she and Jamie are bound by vows and by blood and by friendship as well. I thought that was so cute. That was adorable. But in that same breath, she's also thinking of leaving him and hoping that she doesn't hurt him too badly when she leaves. And I'm like, Claire, girl, I know, but he's so cute. He's trying to get you a fish. And then, he goes on to notice that he just knows. He knows her. He already knows her. He knows what she's thinking about. He can read her. He knows her, And I thought it was interesting. So he knows she's thinking of Frank the Tank. And I also, he knows that. So she's comparing the two in her mind. And I have to note that when she's comparing Jamie and Frank, Jamie kisses her, right? Now she mentions here, and this is a quote, that she had kissed her share of men, particularly, I can't say that word, you guys. Do you guys have words that you can't say? Tell me in the chat, what words can't you say? Anyway, that word. During the war years, when flirtation and instant romance were the light-minded companions of death and uncertainty. So she admits that she's kissed men during the war. But I remember when she was so angry when Frank asked her, have you been with anyone else during the war? She got awful defensive. I'm just saying, which I know she hasn't been with anyone else, but I'm just saying, I'm like, Claire, girl, you're saying you're out here kissing men during the war. It's kind of messy, right? Anyway, Claire's lying next to Jamie in the ferns, watching him sleep, and she admits in her mind how she feels about him, right? She's infatuated with him, which I don't know that I buy that. I don't know that she's just infatuated with him, but that's just me. And she says that she had felt it before in the war, but she'd never acted on it, which, didn't you just say that you'd kissed men in the war? But whatever. Maybe that's not acting. Maybe she thinks acting on it is acting on it. I don't know. But she says now she's been forced to. She sure has. Many times. Many times. Anyway, Jamie and Claire return to the inn, and Jamie reveals to Claire that there were 3 conditions that were to be met before he would marry her. Number 1, they would have the inn to themselves for a few days. Number 2, they would be married in Kirk before a priest. And number 3, that Claire would have a suitable wedding dress, right? And so they get to talking, and, they talk about, thanks, John. Her accents, and, Claire's like, who do you think I am? And Jamie tells her, I don't know who you are. But, I mean, he doesn't think that she's a spy, So then we go on to chapter 17. The watch have gone west And so Rupert and the others are going east to raid cattle from the Grants. So they're going opposite directions. And Jamie tells Claire that cattle will follow Rupert wherever. I love that. And that's a bit of foreshadowing for you, by the way. And Jamie and Claire find a plover. And this part made me cry. I don't know about you guys. I cry over everything, but this part really did make me cry. And Jamie tells Claire that there is, the story behind the plover and how they have the spirits of mothers that were unalived in childbirth and how they cry for their lost children. Jamie speaks Gaelic to the bird and then he lets it go. So Claire knows now, she recognizes him say, "God go with you, mother," when he lets the bird go. And so she asks him, "How old were you?" And he tells her 8. So she knows he lost his mother in childbirth. Oh my God, that was so sad. Oh, that was so sad. Jamie asked Claire, is it usual what's between us? Is it always so between a man and a woman? And Claire knows, no, it's not. She's probably never felt that before. And she has to be feeling this connection with him. And even if she doesn't know what it is or can't explain it, she has to be feeling this like attachment and this pull to him, right? So they're sitting together and Claire's like admiring this daisy and an arrow comes flying out of nowhere and we meet Hugh Monroe, right? And he is a friend of Jamie's. He is deaf and he's a beggar. And Claire notices the medals that he has. And Jamie tells her that they are called gaberlunzies and they are licenses to beg. So he has one in each parish because of what he had been through. I also read, someone did a great analysis of this chapter and they had said how Jamie makes such a, Jamie wants to hide his scars, right? And he's not ashamed of them, but he doesn't want to show them. And he's, if we remember from this chapter, he's like, show her your scars, show her your feet, show her this, show her that, show her this. And Claire's like, that's all right. But he's so eager to show her that. And he's like, well, he got this because he wouldn't convert. He did this because, he wouldn't convert. He's Christian. He did this for the Christian faith. And so it's like Jamie thinks that that's like he earned those scars somehow. You know what I mean? Like Jamie didn't earn his scars. I'm like, Jamie, you earned your scars too. Like, be proud of those scars. You know what I mean? So it's, I don't know. I can't take credit for that. That was someone else. I can't remember who I read that from, but they did a great analysis. And I made that was a great point made. Monroe agrees to carry a message for Jamie to change the location for the meeting place with Horrocks, where it won't be so dangerous for Jamie. And then we're on to chapter 18, which is Raiders in the Rocks. So Claire, Jamie, and all of them are on the road again, and Claire asks Dougal how Randall took the news. And he tells her, quote, "There's likely limits even to your tolerance for bad language, Mistress Fraser." And then he goes on to refer to her as Colum's niece. And Claire really hadn't even taken into consideration that she was Colum's niece. And so she kind of takes a minute and thinks, wow, I'm, the Mackenzie chieftain's niece, the war chieftain's niece. I'm connected with Simon Fraser, Lord Lovett now. I'm connected with, who else did she say here? The abbot of a powerful French abbey. and so many other people that she hasn't even met yet or knows. Yeah, Claire does have status. She knows, like, she's feeling pretty safe from Blackjack at this point, right? So they stop for the night and they gather all around a fire, and Myrta sings. I want to hear Myrta sing. Why didn't they have Myrta sing in the show? I want to hear Myrta sing. I would have loved to see that. So Rupert tells the story about the water horse, and I really love that in the show. I don't know if you guys love that. I loved reading that again. So he's telling that story, and as he's doing that, Claire kind of feels Jamie tense up, right? And he kind of whispers in her ear, the horses are restless, you know, when I tell you you're gonna run to that cleft in the rocks over there, here's a dirk. You know, when I say go, you go. And so she's just kind of like observing everybody and all the men move around. It was such a good chapter. I think this was my favorite chapter out of all of them. So she's watching all the men kind of shift and move around, and she's realizing what they're doing, because they're getting up and they're not like, you know, one man goes up and goes to the pot and like stirs the stew. You know, he's just like getting some more stew. And she's like, what are they doing? And then she realizes they're like, because he'll like stand up, get some stew, and then go sit at a different place than where he was before. So they were exactly, Mackenzie, they were moving closer to their weapons. And so they all knew how to do it without looking obvious, right? Without making a scene. And so Jamie tells her, you know, Jamie looks at Myrta, and Myrta looks at Claire. And so poor Claire is just like, what? And then, you know, the Grants, who she assumes is the Grants, you know, scream and run over the rocks, and the fight is on. And, you know, he tells her to go, and she's crawling on her hands and knees to this, you know, this crack in the rocks, and she's hitting her head and she's scraping her knees, and this, oh, poor Claire. And so she finally makes it, and she's watching, you know, and she notices that Myrta is standing outside the cleft, the little hole in the rocks there. And so she realizes then, oh, that's what they were doing. And so Myrta is there to kind of, you know, guard her and keep her safe. So she's watching the fighting, and Dougal and Jamie are standing back to back, right? And they are, can you imagine what a force they are just watching that and I loved that whole description of Diana describing them fighting like back to back. And man, I cannot imagine. I would not want to be like on the other side of them, like fighting them. So Dougal, you know, gets an injury in his arm, right? He gets slashed in his arm. And so he goes down, and Jamie just, you know, I think, doesn't Dougal like give him a look or something, and he just ends up like throwing his sword at, you know, the man, and yep. And then it's over, right? But they end up making off with like horses and grain, but their biggest loss is that one of their men was taken. So Dougal's not happy about that. And, you know, this part made my stomach like queasy, how she ends up sewing up his arm with what they use to like fix the harnesses, or like mend the harnesses. Oh God. And then how Dougal had to stop and get sick. I cannot even imagine how painful that had to be. Oh my gosh. And then the chapter ends, and I love how they all kind of decide who's best with the dirk to teach Claire how to fight, and they all choose who's the best to teach her, and they pick Rupert, which I honestly love the changes that they've made in the show. And I love how they made Angus a bigger character in the show and made Rupert and Angus a duo. I think it really adds. I don't think it's needed in the book, but for show purposes, I definitely think it's needed. And I love that they made his character more. And I think it was a good change that they made for the show, for sure. Okay, and then we're on to chapter 19, the water horse. Left them together in the show, yeah. The water horse is when Claire sees the Loch Ness monster. So Claire is, down on the banks, and she's just, Nessie! And this is where I don't have my notes, so just kind of bear with me here. So I love how she describes it too. And she says, I felt some faint kinship with it, a creature further from its own time than I. The flat eyes, old as its ancient, I don't know what that word is, seas, eyes grown dim in the murky depths of its shrunken refuge. I mean, it's just, so she feels connected to it. Shortest chapter ever. I love how she feels some sort of kinship with the Loch Ness monster, because it's almost like she knows that this is from another time, or that this is possibly like, could be like a time traveler like her. What if it came from a portal? What if, I love how she says, I felt a kinship with it. She wasn't scared of it. She wasn't. And then how she just tells it goodbye. I love how she turns around, and then there's, the man that they're with standing there, and he's like, oh. And he's like, probably thinking she's like a witch or something. And he's like, have mercy, lady. She's like, don't be ridiculous. But then she realizes, like, oh my gosh, like, please don't make a scene. Please don't make a scene. Like, it's fine. It's fine. It's just the mom. Like, it's fine. And so she, she's like, notices him looking at her like constantly. So she's like, please don't make trouble for me. Poor Claire. People are always thinking she's a witch. Chapter 20. This is when Hugh Monroe gives Claire, oh gosh. This is when Claire, and I wish, was he scared of Claire because she wasn't scared of Nessie? I think so. I think from his perspective, because, oh yay, Elizabeth, thanks for being here. I think that maybe from his perspective too, it may be because, she wasn't afraid of it, and maybe to him, it looked like she summoned it because she was down there when it popped up. So maybe it seemed like to him that she summoned it, and then it went back down. So chapter 20, we get Claire and Jamie's, yeah, he might have thought she called it, wedding present from Hugh Monroe, which is the beautiful dragonfly in amber. I wish that they would have included the message. Why didn't they include the message? I know it's because he had just given it to them, but he could have like scribbled it. Jamie being confused about what a fortune cookie is. I know, I love the little bits of like sarcasm, like just Claire's sarcasm thrown in there. I wish they would have thrown his little note in there, because this will come into play later. Well, I don't know if it'll come in later in the books, but in the show, it would have made so much more sense if they would have put this in the show now. Because in the show, they never mentioned this, and then it was just magically in like the flashback when she sees what she sees. If you haven't, I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't gotten that far, but you know what I'm talking about. And then there's the inscription that we get the inscription for, and I'm like, it just would have made more sense if we knew where it came from. Anyway, so he leaves them this beautiful little poem here, and it says, it translates to, then let amorous kisses dwell on our lips, begin and tell 1,000 and 100 score, 100 and 1,000 more. Oh, Jamie explains to Claire here how why Lollybrock is so important to Dougal. So he was pew-pewed from behind, which would mean that someone wasn't pew-pewing at him. So Dougal pew-pewed him from behind. That's where he had that wound that Claire healed for him. And he was like, well, you know, if he wanted to unalive me, he wouldn't have done it in front of his own men anyway. But Claire's like, well, why would he, you know, anyway, he was like, he didn't necessarily want me unalived because he would want Lollybrock. And he would want Lollybrock for the men. Because, here, it says, besides being a rich bit of ground, the estate sits at the head of a mountain pass, the only good pass into the highlands for 10 miles in either direction. Come to another rising, it would be a valuable bit of land to control, and if I were to unalive before wedding, chances are the land would go back to the Frasers. So he didn't want the land to be in Fraser's hands, right? And he knew, he was hoping that another rising would come because he wants a Stuart on the throne, because he is a Jacobite. So he's hoping, you know, yes, he's being strategic. He knows another rising's coming. He's hoping, he's crossing his fingers and his toes that another rising is coming because he wants, you know, the Bonnie Prince's father, James, on the throne. He wants the rightful king back on the throne. So he knows how important Lollybrock is, the land and the men are. So he doesn't necessarily want Jamie unalived, because if Jamie passes away, then the land goes back to the Frasers, and he doesn't know what the Frasers are going to do. But now that he's married, who gets Lollybrock? Claire. And then Claire and Jamie, they go down into a glen to do their business, right? To have a little bit of marital bliss. And they are come upon by 2 English deserters, and Claire luckily has just been trained by Rupert how to use her dirk, and she uses the dirk, and Jamie is made to watch, right? He can't do anything. He's held at pew-pew point. He's not able to help. If he would have helped, he would have been unalived. So he's made to stand there and watch, as Claire had to take matters into her own hands. And luckily, you know, Rupert had taught her how to use her dirk. So thank you, Rupert, for that. She did. Our girl, she can hold her own. So Jamie goes to meet Horrocks, and he leaves Claire in this wooded area, and she's not happy to be left alone. She wants to go with him. I mean, she had, and I understand that, she had just been like nearly blank. She was just assaulted. Like, I don't blame her for wanting to be with her husband. I would not want to be alone, you know? So regardless, Jamie is stubborn, and he's going to do what he wants to do. And he says, no, you're staying here. If I have to tie you to the tree, I will tie you to the tree. You're staying here. And so she stays in the wooded area. But does she stay? No. Because she realizes, what am I doing? This is the perfect time for me to escape and go back to the stones at Craignadoon. So she sure tries, doesn't she? So she, you know, she starts to hop and skip across the stream, but she falls. And she falls into the stream, and she starts sinking. And Claire always be clearing. But she realizes that she can sink down enough to where her feet touch the bottom, and then she can just push herself up, you know, to where she can catch her breath and then hopefully swim to the bank. And so she does that, And when she comes up for air, she sees something, wait, she doesn't quite know what it is, but she sees something, so she grabs it, and it's a hand. Oh no, whose hand is it? Ugh, Corporal Hawkins. Okay, so now we're on to chapter 21. And the man we all hate, Blackjack Randall, is back. And she is locked in this room with Blackjack Randall. Ugh. I love how she's absolutely soaked and she's just like purposefully like dripping all over. I wanted to see that. Like just her like going through his things, like, and how she like got his wig and was like putting the sand all over it and just putting it back. I wanted to see that. He is interrogating her and she's just trying to play it like cool as a cucumber. And, she, I really wanted to see this in the show with her just dripping, her dress just totally like sopping wet, just sitting in the chair, like her hair just, totally. Anyway, so he keeps giving her, he gives her wine. Thank you so much for the follow. He gives her wine and then they bring in like tea. She tries to play the old, oh, well, my husband's going to thank you for, he's going to know that I'm here, like blah, 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 blah. Like, he tells her like they don't know, like they're not going to know you're here. Like, sorry about you. Every trick that she tries to play, he just one-ups her, right? Because he knows, like he likes this, right? So he gives her wine and then he brings in tea. And so she tells him, is this another form of Torture, Torture, where, by bladder, right? You're just going to make me sit here until I burst. And so he's like, oh no, go to the bathroom. And so she goes to the bathroom and she's like, think, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And so she gets an idea in her head, the Duke of Sandringham. So that's her only card that she has to play. And she has to like put all her hopes into this card. She says, because he wants to know, who's your employer? Who's your employer? Who do you work for? Because he tells her here that he's going to take her to Edinburgh, to this terrible prison, if she's not forthcoming with him, right? She tells him, what would the Duke of Sandringham say about that? And he spills his tea. And so anyway, she plays like, oh, no, I hope that doesn't stain. Kind of like the show, only with, he did that with wine. And so he knows. He kind of figures it out. Like, oh, nope, you're lying to me. You're playing me. And I know better than that. And so then this is when he gets rough with her. He assaults her and he throws her down, right? And so she screams and he's like, go ahead and scream. Like, no one's going to help you. No one's coming for you, right? But someone does come for her. And who is it? It's Jamie. He does. And he tells her, I'll thank you to take your hands off my wife. Oh, Jamie, I love him. So now, Blackjack puts together that the man that he did that to and Claire are married. Jamie bluffs his way in there with an unloaded pew-pew and is able to, knock Randall unconscious. They're able to get out of there. They escape because, the men created diversion and explosion. So they escape, they meet up with the others, and they're riding along, and Jamie is just like, being really short with her. And she's like, what's your problem? Pretty much. What is so wrong? What is wrong with you? And she asks him, why are you sulking? And so he pulls his horse off and tells Dougal and them to go ahead. and they have it out. They have it out, and things are said on both sides that are very hurtful, right? I mean, she calls him a brute and a fool. He, he basically tells her that he thinks that she got captured on purpose to punish him for what happened in the glade. And she basically says, you don't care about me. You just think I'm your property, and you don't like when someone takes something that belongs to you. And he says, you do belong to me, whether you like it or not. And she says, I don't like it. And then she calls him a rutting bastard, which is what the English deserter had called him. And that really hurt him. That really hurt him. And they both said things back and forth to really hurt each other, right? And she told him, it's your pride that's hurt. I'm the one that saved us. You, what did she say? You just stood there. If I hadn't had what she had, we'd both be unalive by now. She said until she had spoken those words, she didn't realize how angry she was at him. He said, do you know what would have happened to me if they would have caught me? And he tells her, what happened to him on his back, and he would have been unalived. And he said, that didn't matter to me. I had to try to get you out. I had to try to get to you. And when I heard you scream, that's, he said, I came to you with my bare hands and an empty pew and my two hands. He said, my pride is hurt, and my pride is all about I've got left to me. And he said, you're tearing my guts out, Claire. And so she apologizes, and he apologizes, and that's the first argument that they had. And they both forgive each other, but she says, we had forgiven each other, but our words still hung in memory, not to be forgotten. It's kind of it's true. Once you say something, you can't take that back, right? You can forgive someone, but you can't take back what you say. I don't know. That was a hard chapter to end on, but, oh, man. That was sad. But we know they're going to be okay. We know they're going to be okay.